Coming up on Over a Barrel, dispelling the myths of all the gasoline demand during the holidays. May not be what you're thinking. That starts right now on Over a Barrel. Welcome to the program. I'm Matt McClain. That guy over there on the other side of your screen, if you're watching us, happens to be Patrick DeHaan. And hi, Patrick. How are you,
Hey,
sir?
Matt. I'm great. How are you? Holidays are here. Always a festive time of year. Always get a lot of those holiday-related questions right about now. How are you?
Doing fairly good for an
Good.
upcoming holiday. I cannot complain. Or if I did, it really wouldn't matter,
Well, you
right?
shouldn't
Because, it's
complain.
a
Gas
holiday.
is cheap right now, so
It is. It is. And I'm very thankful for that, by the way. And so I want to talk to you today, especially about the demand of gasoline during the holidays, because, everybody travels. There's a lot of travel going on. So that would obviously, in a logical
yeah.
world, mean more gasoline is being used. But I have a feeling you are about to dispel my theory. Talk to me about this. What's going on?
Matt, this is a popular question that we see all the time. Kind of natural. You see gas price stories like this one that we pulled up. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the story. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere, what we're talking about is gasoline costs. See this myth here, Matt? Why does gasoline cost more on holidays and weekends? And I love this. A petroleum engineer just answers the exact same way I would. Well, in short, they aren't related. Gasoline demand and the holidays really are not related in the way people would think. And, there's a lot of stories around the holidays, Matt, about how many millions of Americans are going to be hitting the road. But we saw that for Thanksgiving, Matt, and gas prices, the national average did not shoot up for Thanksgiving, right? I mean, it fluctuates here and there, and gas prices in some states may inch up, but it's really 50-50, So I love, coming into this that we're able to give a little bit more reasoning here. Here's the thing, Matt. And like I said, a lot of the time this time of year, you're hearing travel forecasts, the airport's going to be busy, everything's going to be busy. But, as much as it's busy, Matt, a lot of us are basically traveling at the same time. That's where the busyness comes from. And so think of it this way, right? Not a whole lot of Americans are going to be working through the next 7 days. A lot of Americans take time off. It's year end. I mean, how many times you send an email this time of year professionally? And, people are like, I'm out of office until the new year. So there's a lot of folks that just take time off, and schools are closed for the holiday. And so while there's a lot of people around and driving to grandma's house and, friends and loved ones are seeing each other, it doesn't lead to an increase in gasoline demand. In fact, one of the
Really?
weakest periods of the year for gasoline demand is actually the week of Christmas. In fact, Christmas Day demand is at its lowest level during the year. And, I don't know about you, but I will be taking a little bit of time off here. And most Americans do. And that means that in the process, Matt, we're not going about our daily lives. We're not driving to school and work. And so while there's a lot of people all on the road at the same time, demand for gasoline during at least winter holidays tends to be quite a bit lower.
So I can totally understand where you're coming from with holidays as far as the actual day of the holiday. Yeah, not a lot of people. And if they are driving, it might be from, grandma's house or, mom's house to grandma's house, that
Right.
kind of a thing. And I understand that. Or from like a hotel to whatever. But I would think that the travel, and this is just me, but I would think that the traveling leading up to that actual day is obviously more than normal. And you're saying that the fact that we don't travel hardly at all on Christmas Day makes up for the difference?
Well, it's not only Christmas Day, Matt, but Christmas Eve, the day after. As we get into New Year's, I mean, people are taking a lot of time off, and schools are closed basically until January. So keep in mind that people aren't going to their jobs as often. Their kids are home, friends and family are together. They're not driving around. Now, the difference is there can be differences in holidays, right? July 4 is one of those get outside, barbecue, put the boat in the lake if you have one, drive up to the cottage, go to a state park, get outside, be active. That's the difference here is it's winter. I don't know about you, but there's not going to be a whole lot of boats on Lake Michigan this week or in the lakes, right? It's just not conducive for getting outside. So, the other thing with, I think Americans believe this is because, you get headlines like this, gas prices rise, Americans hit the road. So a lot of people make the connection, oh, it's a holiday weekend, gas prices are going to go up, right? Because of sometimes it makes sense. But when you think about it, Americans are going to hit the road. But even for July 4, Matt, demand is not as impressive. And the other thing about this is it's in such a short burst of time. We're talking about a couple days for July 4. And if a July 4 is, in the middle of a week, say it's on a Wednesday, people still have to work July 3 and 5, right? Those aren't holidays.
Right.
So
That's a
the
good
big
point.
difference is that it's only for a day or two here and there that demand is, much higher. And as I mentioned, it usually averages out over the rest of the week. So if you look at that, and by the way, that's what markets really look at is weekly demand, not daily demand, because it's so noisy. Mondays are lower than Fridays. One week is, so all in all, generally speaking, summer holidays will see an increase in weekly demand. But then after people travel and spend time with, friends and put the boat in the lake the week after, they're back at the grind. Demand goes back down. So that's the interesting factor here, Matt, is that people don't realize that if you look at the entirety of a week, it smooths out. And the way energy markets look at this is, if demand is higher for like the summer, that's a much longer period of time, right? 3 months. That makes sense that higher demand would make more of an
Right.
impact, right?
Okay.
But
Now, oh, go ahead. I've got a question, but go ahead. I
I was
think you
going to
need to
say,
finish that
so,
off.
if it's only higher for a day or two here and there, it's smoothed out because there's not a whole lot of reporting mechanisms that look at just one day. All of the government data, all the reports look at longer stretches like weekly and monthly. So now
Oh,
your question.
okay. All right. So we've had a person indicate, why your price is always higher on the weekend, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right?
Yep.
And then the analyst or the oil person said, no, it's not. It's really not. You're just paying more attention, et cetera, et cetera. What about price cycling? Would there be? Oh, see, you laugh at this, but think about it. What if the price cycle is usually on an upward slope toward the weekend and then makes its way back down toward the middle of the week? This is not
That
a terrible question.
no, this is actually a really good question because the other question is, will gas prices go up for the holiday? Because a lot of people, to your point, they're more price sensitive, right? Some of them are waiting to fill up their boat. They're waiting to fill up the RV in the summer. Not so much this time of year are they waiting to fill their tank, but so let me be clear here because that is actually like a really good question. So stations also know that like a holiday like July 4 or maybe Christmas, there's going to be more people collectively filling up at similar times. Now, to your point, price cycling is something that happens in some states, definitely not all of them. It's starting to happen in more states. Price cycling is kind of like a roller coaster ride. If you've been tuned into the podcast, you know what price cycling is because we've talked about it. But let's say, for example, this is your first episode. Let's say you live somewhere and you've noticed that prices will inexplicably shoot up like 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 cents all in one day.
Uh
That's
huh.
what we're talking about here. That's what we call price cycling. And to give you an idea of what that looks like, this is what we call price cycling: up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So Matt's question is, will this price cycling, like what is the timing with the holiday? So price cycling is essentially a really aggressive game of competition where stations are always undercutting each other and prices go down really quick. Like look at this, Matt, between August, my hometown, Grand Rapids, prices in late July, 3.94 a gallon, but look how quick they went down. A month later, a little over a month later, they're all the way down to 3.09 a gallon. So a huge drop. And so this is the game of price cycling. Prices have gone down. Now, to your point, does the holiday influence this? Well, I think right now, as it turns out, yes, a holiday can influence the timing of a price cycle because oftentimes, price cycling happens at some of the bigger chains and stations that have a lot of locations. Those are the types of companies that have pricing analysts that are looking at the market. Coincidentally, those pricing analysts probably like to take time off too, like Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and New Year's, just like anyone else would. So if those folks aren't in the office, what they may do is say, well, we want to avoid having to go to the office. We're also nervous that if this price cycling continues to push prices down during a long holiday, that our stations may be selling below their replacement cost. So that's where the timing does matter. They know there's a lot of people that are going to be traveling. They want to be on the right side of profitability. They don't want to lose a ton of money over the holiday by having prices that are essentially below their cost. So yes, that's where a holiday could influence the timing of a price cycle. And I think that's actually why this week we saw a big price cycle. And it happened in Michigan, Indiana, Ohio. You can see here on the edge of the chart here, Matt, you can see that this just literally happened in this area of Michigan. And if you add like Columbus to that, if I can type right, Columbus, Ohio is also a market that engages in price cycling, and so is Indianapolis. So if we quickly add those all those areas, yeah, look at that, they all went up. And not look at if you look at the chart here, they don't always line up in perfect order. Sometimes one of these cities will go up and the other won't. But if you look close here on the last month, they all just went up on the same day, right here highlighted. And so I think to your point, yes, a holiday can influence the exact timing. But if you look back here at the last 6 months, price cycles generally happen every 1 to 2 weeks anyway. So the price cycle isn't because of the holiday, but the timing can be moved up so that stations make sure they're on the right side of things in time for the holiday.
So can that price cycling also, to go back to that individual's post, can sometimes that price cycling take place, let's say on a Friday, as you're heading toward your weekend, and then by Monday or Tuesday it starts going back down?
Now, we've studied this extensively, this price cycling. So, and not every market's the same. In fact, we're finding more and more markets, Matt, that are deviating from long established behavior. One of those markets that we actually identified earlier this year that now seems to be engaging in a little bit more price cycling is Denver. And they're starting this up and down behavior, and more areas. I think Florida as well, like Tampa, Florida is now, yeah, look at this price cycling over and over. Now it looks like they kind of are stuck between a high and low. Um, and now that I've kind of gone off on that and including more areas, I'm trying to loop back to the meat of your question, which was the
Weekends.
that's right, the weekend. So we've
Yep.
studied this, and most of the time, price cycles are more likely Monday or Tuesday or Thursday, not so much Friday. It can happen, it's really rare, but in these markets that price cycle, you'll almost never see prices go up on Saturday or Sunday. Friday is probably less. It has happened that you see a spike on a Friday or Saturday, but most of the time it's Monday or Tuesday or Thursday. And now there is a reason why there might be that, right? Over the weekend, the wholesale price of gasoline is basically fixed. It doesn't change over the weekend because energy markets are closed. So usually what stations might do is knowing that their cost is not changing, they may get aggressive on undercutting prices. And then on Monday morning, they may say, "Oh boy, we've gotten a little too aggressive." And that's why Monday, when energy markets open, if there's any chance oil goes up, that immediately puts a station underwater. So
Gotcha.
Monday, because stations get aggressive on the weekend, and Thursday's the other day because there's a major government report that comes out on Wednesday, which can be very influential to energy markets on Wednesday. And by Wednesday night, the effects of that report actually trickle down to the rack. The rack is where gas stations are sending their massive tanker trucks to fill up with gasoline. And so basically that government report Wednesday morning can push energy markets to close higher Wednesday night, which then pushes some stations to say, "Hey, Thursday morning, look at the cost just shot up. We need to adjust." So that's why some days you more frequently see price cycles than other days.
So is it fair to say that, I mean, I understand why, the comments are back and forth, but this individual saying why are prices always higher? Okay, that's
Yeah.
probably not fair to say that it's always higher every weekend or whatever the case may be. But is it fair to say that the truth may lie somewhere in the middle? Because sometimes it might be higher on the weekends and not, and other times it may be the exact opposite. Is that
Yeah.
kind of right down the
Yeah.
middle of the road?
You're right on par. Sometimes prices will go up on a Friday. Keep in mind, Matt, that energy markets are open Monday through Friday, just like the stock market. right? Whenever the stock market is open, generally energy commodities like oil are moving around in price. And so, yes, there will be some times that coincidentally, close to a holiday, gas prices go up because energy markets are constantly fluctuating. But there will be times that they go down. So, if you were to pull up a chart, generally speaking, there's an equal chance. I don't know. It might be less than equal. It might be slightly more than equal. Gas prices could go down approaching a holiday. And if you were to look at like a year chart, which I'm trying to pull up here, I'll share this chart. But generally speaking, Matt, if you look at this chart, you see a very cyclical pattern here.
Hmm.
Gas prices lower in winter, see January, February. They start going up in the spring. And then after peaking right here in April or May, they start to slide off a bit going into June. Now, July and August is when they can be influenced by hurricanes, so they can go up. But then once summer's over, so are the requirements for summer gasoline, and that's why you start to go back down. So, literally, almost every year, Matt, in a perfect world, this chart is going to look very much like a mountain. It's going to start in a valley, it's going to go up, and then it's going to peak in the early summer and start going back down. So, this year was actually very normal. Even hurricanes didn't have much of an impact. So, yeah, I mean, back to the point, it's completely coincidental, but gas prices are always going to be higher on July 4th than they are on New Year's Day, unless there's something like COVID, right? Which of course throws the whole playbook out the window.
Very, very valid point. And even geopolitical things can sometimes do that. There's a lot of anomalies out there, both of man-made and,
And we
Mother
talk about
Nature,
those
so to
all the
speak.
time, right?
Absolutely. Those things can throw a wrench into the situation, a cog into the wheel, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's certainly understandable. So, for the next couple of weeks, basically rounding out the rest of 2024, and it's hard to believe this year has flown by. In this month has flown by. What are we looking at as far as between now and let's say the end of the year? I mean, what are our prices looking at right now?
Well, Matt, the national average usually bottoms out in a normal year. The lowest it goes is between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Now, some areas can get a limited opportunity in January and February because remember, those summer gasoline requirements do start kicking back in late February, early March. But why prices usually go up in February and March is because it starts to slowly warm up. Refineries are going to start doing maintenance. Construction workers and refinery workers, they will not get outside. It doesn't make any sense to have them outside when it's like 0 degrees. So usually the maintenance work, and keep in mind, refineries are outside. Usually maintenance starts in mid to late February because it's the coldest month. January and February are the coldest months. So demand is at its lowest in those 2 months. And usually by mid to late February, supply has built up to adequate levels that refineries can say, hey, we're going to start doing maintenance because we've got enough supply built up. Maintenance happens, inventories start going down as that maintenance is starting. So that triggers prices to go up. And then the transition to summer gasoline starts already in March for most of the country. It's kind of like the 4-step fertilizer, right? It's a process that takes a while. So usually refinery maintenance is happening at the same time that the transition to summer gasoline starts. And that's usually why gas prices really start to ramp up in March and April. So that's the yearly cycle. Again, usually this is, I mean, for most people, I'm going to guess that today's price or the prices they've seen in the last week or two, your prices down there are probably pretty close to as good as they will be. There might be a little bit of a chance that they could go a little lower in January, February, but I hate to break it to you, Matt. Yeah, don't hold your breath for $1.99. It's not going to happen. So we'll have to see, but usually that's the cycle. So we're getting close. Get your last minute photo op with those low prices because
All
the
right.
seasonality is it's around the corner. And it's good news. I don't know about you, but it's getting dark here in Chicago at like 4:15, 4:30.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm eager to talk about warmer weather and sunset times that aren't really ridiculously early.
Oh, I'm going to throw one more thing out for you to comment on.
One last thing.
We've seen a lot of headlines over the past week regarding daylight saving time and whether or not it will continue in the
Yeah.
future ahead or not.
Hmm.
Um, I would think, obviously, changing time in our nation to where in the summer months it might get darker much earlier do you think that could have a big impact
Yeah.
on fuel usage? Like
I mean, maybe
it
not a
may.
big impact, but yeah, I mean, if it's getting dark earlier, there's going to be less people out. So, you know, if normal hours, right? If we're shifting time to where there's more, like, you know, if 11 o'clock is or 10 o'clock at night is more light, well, people are going to be more active when it's lighter
Mhm.
outside. So, for example, if we do, like, if we discontinue daylight savings, Matt, right now in Chicago, or in the summer, I should say, the sunset starts coming up before 5 a.m. Like, I think it peaks at,
4:15 in the morning is what I saw for Chicago in the
yeah,
month
that
of
and
June.
that so again, if we're shifting time, that can have a role because Americans generally are going to be outside more and active when it's light. So that's one of the things you have to think about when you're shifting time is, are you shifting time where more Americans are going to be awake, or normal hours, it's darker during normal hours longer, or is it going to be lighter when people can take advantage of that to go for an extra hike or do an outdoor activity that they may not do when it's dark out? So to your point, yeah, even things like changing or shifting time can have an impact on gasoline demand. It probably would not be big, but in the summer months, it could be definitely, you know, more impactful than minor. It's probably
Yeah.
somewhere between minor and moderate.
Yeah, I was going to say in the wintertime, it would have probably the same, the time stays what it is, right? So,
Right,
but it
because I
is
mean
that
it's cold
summertime.
out anyway, so you're not going
Yep.
to be doing things, but in summer the opportunity cost is probably much more noticeable. I mean, if you can go out and boat for another hour during the day, you can bet that people are going to use every minute of daylight in the summer that they can.
Yeah, that's the key. Or if they keep daylight saving time year round and we lose standard time, because that's also been a debate whether or not to keep us on, that time.
Right.
Then I suppose instead of it getting dark at 4:30 in the afternoon in Chicago, it'd be dark at 3:30 in the afternoon because
Well, 4:30, I think that's the earliest it can go because that is without daylight time. That's standard time.
right,
So if we went to daylight savings, instead of it getting dark at 4:30 in the cold months, it
it'd be
would be
getting dark
dark
at
at
like 3:30,
5:30. Or
5:30.
right?
Maybe. Ooh, we need listeners and viewers to
Oh,
figure this one out
so
for
our
us.
time falls back, right? So
Yeah,
what would be
if
5:30
we kept it
is now
forward.
4:30, right?
No, if we
Because in
kept it
time
daylight saving time,
in
if it
fall, so
was 5:30,
it wouldn't get dark at 3:30, you get dark at 5:30.
I think you've got it upside down. Ooh, this is a debate.
No, because well, here's the thing, Matt. In the fall, when we switch time, it used to
Hmm.
go from being dark at 5:30. When we lose daylight savings, it gets dark at 4:30.
Gets dark at 4:30. Uh, that's a very good point. That's a yeah.
Right.
So
So
yeah.
yeah.
So
So you know, the day
all right,
before,
not so much
everyone's
of a
like,
debate.
"Oh, this is the last day that the sun's going to go down after 5 o'clock," because then
Yep.
it makes that big jump. And then in the spring, when we spring ahead, then we're losing the darkness a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I
Meaning the
see your
sunset
point
will
now.
go back to, 5:30 or whatever it is. And then
I
in
see your
Chicago,
point.
it peaks at about what? I think 9 o'clock, because, when I was born and raised in Grand Rapids, you'd still have to wait. The fireworks, July 4, you'd have to wait until it gets dark because at 10 o'clock, that's usually when you start getting enough darkness. So, to
Yeah.
make the 10 o'clock sunset, or that would be the peak. But even in Grand Rapids, that would be a big deal because I'm jealous, by the way, because they are in the extreme western part of a time zone and I'm in the extreme eastern part of the time zone. So
Yeah.
I don't like these 4:30 sunsets.
Yeah. You and I are actually as
And
far
you're in
as.
eastern, right?
Yeah, I am in Central, but
Okay,
barely,
okay.
just like you. If I go an hour east of where I'm at right now, I pop into the Eastern time zone. It doesn't take much from where I'm sitting right now to be into that Eastern time zone. So I fully understand. Maybe a little bit more than an hour, but still, an hour as the birds fly. How about that? It would be an Eastern time zone. So no, I fully understand that. And yes, you're exactly right. So all right, well, so that answers. I mean, those are some very good
It's a
concepts.
fascinating thing that can have an impact on what we do. I mean, the whole point was too is, right. There's differences in power consumption. There's a
Hmm.
lot of, and that's why this is not just. I mean, a lot of folks have suggested that this is just, oh, it's easy. We should just do it. Well, there's a lot of complicated factors that if you're not thinking about how it could shift gasoline demand, if suddenly gasoline demand even goes up 5 or 10%, you're going to
That's a big
notice.
deal.
That is a
Yeah,
big deal.
that's a very big deal in the summer months for sure. Well,
I mean, if you're
well,
giving more people, like if the sunset goes down at 5:30 instead of 4:30 in Chicago, you're giving me an hour extra that I can be more active.
it's
So
true.
that, there are things to think about, but also highlighting, your point about policy shift is we'll be on the mend here, watching for potential impacts, in the weeks ahead. Like, follow, subscribe, throw us a review as well. We'll be here through whatever happens. If we get rid of daylight or if we get rid of standard, we'll be here to talk about it. But for now, Matt, to dispel the myth about gasoline demand going up for the holidays, because it really doesn't make as much difference as a lot of people think, because it's so condensed.
Yeah.
It's so condensed. We're all on the road at once. So it seems really busy, but in essence, it's not enough, and it's not sustained long enough to make an impact on what you're paying at the pump. And what you're paying at the pump is more influenced by the daily fluctuations in the price of oil instead of holidays or elections.
Understood. Well, listen, that is some excellent information. By the way, coming up in the next week's podcast, we need to talk about that for just a moment.
We do, because Matt,
Talk to me.
we've got some interesting stuff going on. I'm real excited. While a lot of folks are resting and relaxing over the holiday, a lot of our team has been really busy at work. I will share my screen here to tease this for just a minute, if I can get it to pull up. But essentially, Matt, the last couple of weeks have been extremely busy for our team. So I am really excited. Let's see here. Share my window. I am really excited. This is what we've been working on. This is it here, folks, that in the next week or so, I'm going to have this whole thing finished up. And, I've been pretty happy, Matt, by the way, this past
You were spot on this past year.
Well, hopefully, I mean, not spot on. There were some, differences. They weren't too big though.
No.
But I'm really looking forward to being able to have folks read what we expect for 2025. So
I'll
a lot of
compare it
hard
like
work
this,
went into
Patrick.
this.
I'll compare it like this. If this were a weather forecast and a 4-degree guarantee, we would have sent an umbrella out to a viewer. Let's go with that, right? I mean, that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Was it an exact penny to penny? Probably not, but you came really close. You certainly were not that far off. I'll toot the horn, so to speak, for you.
I really appreciate that. And you know what? To your point, I'd love to be as accurate, because that's really what it's all about. Helping people try and be able to budget what they should expect for the year ahead. It feels good to get it right. And sometimes, things happen. Like, when we predicted gas prices in 2022 and then Russia invaded Ukraine and the economy reopened, I mean, it was a profound impact, but we did a decent job this year. So again, excited to share that. We will be sure to record that here really soon when we finish recording. But, Matt, I'd like to wish everyone Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. There's a lot of different holidays out there. So whatever you observe, I hope you enjoy time away from work. Hopefully, Matt, you'll be doing some of that. I know I'm going to be stepping away.
I'm going to try. I'm going to try.
It's a little harder when there's still a lot going on, like, the New Year's and the price outlook that we're going to be wrapping up. So, some folks, and by the way, keep in mind when you're on the road this holiday season, when you're filling your tank, keep in mind all the folks behind the scenes that are working, the cashier, the stocker, the trucker, who are all still delivering that gasoline to where you need to go. It's the holidays. Go out of your way to thank somebody for making your holidays happen by being there to make sure that there's food and fuel for you.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, and I couldn't end it on a better note, so I'll just let those words stand. How about that? That is going to wrap up this edition of Over a Barrel. We thank you so much for joining us. We have at least one more episode before the end of 2024, and then we are looking forward to a wonderful 2025 right here on the podcast as well. So for all of us here at GasBuddy and beyond, thanks so much for joining us here at Over a Barrel, and have a good one.